This happened last summer, and ever since then, I haven't touched a dating app again. At the time, I had just gotten out of a long, exhausting relationship, and my friends kept insisting that I needed to get back out there. I wasn't looking for anything serious. I didn't even feel ready for that. Downloading Tinder felt more like a distraction than a real step forward. I remember mindlessly swiping, barely reading profiles, having shallow conversations that didn't mean anything. It was all just noise to fill the silence. Then I matched with someone. His profile didn't stand out in any extreme way, which is probably why I didn't question. He wasn't overly polished or suspiciously perfect, just a normal guy. Attractive, sure, but in a way that felt real, not curated. His bio was short and casual, something like night drives, coffee, and bad decisions. It felt harmless. But when we started talking, something clicked, almost immediately. The conversation flowed too easily. That's the only way I can describe it now. He didn't reply instantly, but always soon enough to keep things going. He knew exactly how to respond without trying too hard, like he had mastered the balance between interest and distance. He asked normal questions, nothing invasive, but somehow he remembered every small detail I mentioned. Within 2 days, it already felt like I'd known him for weeks. At the time, it felt comforting. Looking back, it should have been the first warning sign. There was one thing, though, that stood out early on. He never wanted to video call, not once. Every time I suggested it, he came up with a joke or a casual excuse, saying things like he looked terrible on camera or that he'd make it up to me when we met in person. And I believed him. I didn't give it much attention because everything else about him felt normal. He even sent voice notes sometimes, which made it feel more real, more personal. It made it easier to ignore the things that didn't quite add up. About a week into talking, something small happened. Small enough that I almost dismissed it completely. I was out with my friends at a bar one night. I hadn't told him where I was, just that I was out. We were sitting outside, and I remember checking my phone out of habit. He had sent me a message. "Busy night?" I replied casually. "Yeah, just out with friends." A few seconds later, another message popped up. "Don't stay too late. That area gets weird after 2. I remember staring at the screen. I hadn't told him where I was. I even scrolled back through our chat to make sure I hadn't mentioned it earlier without realizing. There was nothing. So I asked him what he meant, trying to keep it light. He replied with "just guessing, LOL," and I let it go. I told myself it was a coincidence, that I was overthinking it. It had to be. But then it happened again. A few days later, I told him I was going to grab coffee before work. I didn't say where or posted anything. I didn't share my location with anyone. When I got there, I checked my phone and saw a message from him. That place is always packed in the mornings. That was the moment I knew something was up. It wasn't a full realization yet, but it was enough to make me uncomfortable in a way I couldn't explain. I asked him directly how he knew where I was. This time he didn't respond right away. There was a pause. Then he replied, "You told me before." I knew I hadn't. I was sure of it. But instead of pushing further, I let it drop. I told myself it wasn't worth turning into something bigger. That was a huge mistake, to be honest. After that, I started paying closer attention. And once I did, things only got fucking worse. He always seemed to know what I was doing. Not exactly, but close enough. If I said I was out, he'd guess the area with weird accuracy. If I said I was home, he'd ask questions that only made sense if he knew which home. At one point, completely out of nowhere, he asked, "Do you always sit by the window?" I'd never told him that. Not once. That was when I decided to test it. I needed to know if this was real or if I was just spiraling. So I lied. I told him I was going to a mall across town. Instead, I went somewhere entirely different place I had never mentioned before. I was trying to act normal, watching my phone like it might do something. 10 minutes passed, nothing. No messages. I started to feel ridiculous, like it was all in my head. Then I got a message. "You changed plans." That creeped the shit out of me. I stared at the screen, trying to process it. Then another message came through. "Why did you lie?" That was it. That was the moment everything became real. I grabbed my bag and left immediately without finishing my drink. That night, I blocked him on everything. I deleted the app, changed my passwords, locked down every account I could think of. For about a week, nothing happened. It seems like I got rid of him. Slowly, I started to calm down. I told myself it was over, that I stopped it on time. Silly me. Then one night, I went out again. Completely different place, in a different area. I didn't tell anyone where I was going, not even my friends. I just wanted to feel normal again, even if it was just for a little while. I remember standing outside, waiting for my ride, scrolling through my phone and trying not to think about any of it. Someone walked past me, close enough that I noticed, but not enough to make me look up right away. Then I heard a voice, right next to me. What scared me that it was familiar. "You lie a lot in a person too?" Slowly, I looked up. It was him, exactly like his pictures. The same face, the same voice. He didn't look surprised to see me. If anything, he looked like this was the moment he had always been waiting for. I didn't say anything. I just took a step back. He didn't follow me. He didn't try to touch me or raise his voice. He just kept looking at me. My ride pulled up seconds later, and I got in immediately. I didn't look back, didn't say a word the entire way home. After that night, I never saw him again. But I haven't been the same since. I stopped posting in real time. I stopped sharing my location. I stopped trusting how normal someone feels online. Let's just say he kind fucked me up for a while. I matched with him on Tinder after a few days of casually swiping, not really expecting anything serious to come out of it. His profile looked completely normal. There was nothing about him that stood out as suspicious or anything. If anything, he blended in with everyone else, which is probably why I didn't hesitate to match with him. We talked for about a week before deciding to meet, and during that time, everything was cool. The conversations were normal but not intense. He wasn't flirty, didn't try to push things too quickly, and didn't ask any questions that made me uncomfortable. Compared to other guys I talked to, he was actually quieter, more normal. It all felt calm, predictable, and most importantly, safe. That sense of normalcy is exactly what made me agree to meet him in person. We chose a small restaurant in a busy area for the first date. I always make sure first meetings happen somewhere public, with a lot of people around, just in case. When I arrived, he was already there, sitting at a table waiting. The first thing I noticed was that he looked exactly like his pictures. There was no awkward moment of recognition, no doubt. Same face, same voice, same overall presence. That alone made me relax a little, because it meant at least he hadn't lied about who he was. The date itself was uneventful in the most ordinary way. We talked about work, school, and random everyday topics. He wasn't awkward, but he wasn't overly outgoing either. He had this calm, steady way of speaking, like he was always thinking a step ahead before saying anything. One thing I did notice, though, was how closely he paid attention to small details. At one point, I casually mentioned that I didn't like onions, and 10 minutes later, before I even had the chance to say anything, he reminded the waiter about it for me. At the time, it felt thoughtful, like he was genuinely listening. About halfway through the meal, I asked if he lived nearby. He said yes, just a few minutes away, and then added something that was weird for a moment, even if only for a second. He said, "You're not far from here either, right?" I looked at him, confused, and asked what he meant. He casually said, "Just figured. You look familiar around this area." I laughed, brushing it aside with a vague answer, but it didn't feel like a guess. After we finished eating, we stepped outside. The area was still busy, full of people walking around, lights everywhere, noise, nothing that felt unsafe. He asked if I wanted to walk for a bit, and even though I hesitated, I agreed because everything up to that point had been normal. We walked for a few minutes, continuing the conversation, until he suggested I come up to his place. Just for a bit. I immediately said no, politely, telling him I had work early the next day. He didn't push, didn't argue, just nodded and accepted it, which somehow made everything feel even more normal. Then he said, "At least come see it for a second. It's right there," pointing to a building across the street. I don't know why I agreed. Maybe because nothing had gone wrong yet. Maybe because there hadn't been any obvious red flags. So I said okay. We walked into the building, took the elevator up, and stepped into a quiet hallway. He unlocked the door, and the second I walked inside, I didn't feel right. It wasn't immediate fear, I just don't know how to explain it. Just a quiet sense that something wasn't right. The apartment was clean, but not in a normal way, like no one actually lived there. There was no clutter, no personal items, nothing that made it feel like a real home. Just basic furniture, a couch, a table, a TV, and nothing else. I stayed near the door, not taking my jacket off, not sitting down. I told him I couldn't stay long, and he said that was fine before stepping into another room for a moment. I don't know why I followed him with my eyes, but I did, and that's when I saw it. On the wall near a desk, there were photos, printed photos, taped up. At first, my brain didn't fully get what I was looking at. It just looked like random images. But then I focused, and everything inside me dropped. They were pictures of me, not screenshots, not pulled from social media. Real photos, taken from a distance. Me walking down the street, sitting at a cafe, standing outside my building. Different days, different outfits, different times. I didn't react. I didn't say anything. I just stared for a second, maybe two, before slowly stepping back toward the front door. My heart was racing, but I forced myself to stay calm. He walked back into the room and saw me standing there. For the first time that night, something about him changed. He didn't look angry or aggressive, just aware. He knew what I had seen. In a calm, casual voice, he said, "Why did you look at them?" That was enough for me. I didn't respond or ask questions. I just opened the door and left. I walked straight out of the building without stopping, without turning around, without checking if he was behind me. I kept walking until I reached a crowded area where I felt safer, and then I called for a ride. Later that night, he sent me one message. It's not what it looks like. I blocked him immediately, deleted everything, and reported the account. A few days later, I went to the police and showed them everything I had. His profile, the messages, everything I could think of. They took a report, but their response didn't help. They told me that unless he had directly threatened me or tried to harm me, there wasn't much they could do. I never went back to that area again. I changed my routine, stopped using dating apps entirely, and became a lot more careful about what I share and with whom. And I don't know what would have happened if I had stayed even a little longer. This happened about a year ago. I matched with her on Tinder late at night, during one of those mindless scrolling sessions where you're barely even seeing faces anymore. It was random, careless, but her profile caught my attention, not because it was flashy or anything, but because it looked almost suspiciously normal. There were no model quality photos, no filters, nothing that screamed too good to be true, just regular pictures. One of her sitting at a cafe, another with a dog, one with a group of friends. The kind of photos you wouldn't question twice. Even her bio was simple, if anything. That made her feel more real, more grounded than most people on the app. We matched, and she messaged first. "You seem quiet." That was it. No emojis, no effort to be overly clever or flirty. Just a simple observation. And somehow it worked. The conversation that followed felt easy, but not in a way that raised alarms at the time. There were no strange questions, no oversharing, no forced chemistry. She didn't try too hard to impress me, and she didn't disappear either. It was balanced, though natural in a way that made it easy to let my guard down. After a couple of days, we moved the conversation over to Instagram. Everything lined up. Same name, same photos, same general vibe. One thing I did notice, though, was that she never sent snaps or anything live. No spontaneous pictures or videos in real time. Just photos that looked like they had already been taken before. At the time, it meant nothing. Some people just aren't into that kind of thing, and it didn't feel like a big enough detail to matter. About a week in, the tone of her questions started to move slightly. It wasn't obvious or aggressive, just accurate changes. She started asking things that felt personal, but still within the range of normal conversation. What time I usually got home, whether I lived alone, if my place was quiet at night. I answered without thinking much. That's the part that bothers me the most now. How easily I gave that information away. None of it felt dangerous in the moment. It all was harmless. Then one night, she sent me a message that didn't make sense. "Your hallway light flickers a lot." I remember staring at my phone, trying to process what I was reading. Then I looked up toward the hallway. Earlier that day, the light had been flickering on and off. It wasn't something I had mentioned to anyone. Not to anyone at all. I replied, asking what she meant, but she didn't respond. Not for hours. And when she finally did, she acted like nothing had happened, casually changing the subject as if that message had never been sent. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I went back to her profile and started looking more closely at everything I had previously taken at face value. That's when I noticed something small but unsettling. In one of her photos, the one taken at the cafe, there was a reflection in the window behind her. A street sign. It looked familiar. After a few seconds, I realized why. It was in my area. Not directly outside my place, but close enough to make me uncomfortable. So I asked her where she lived. She gave me a completely different part of the city, nowhere near that location. I didn't confront her. I didn't accuse her of anything. I just kept the conversation going, pretending everything was normal. But from that point on, I was watching more carefully. A few nights later, I decided to test something. I told her I was staying over at a friend's place, that I wouldn't be home that night. It wasn't true. I stayed in my apartment, turned off the lights, and kept everything as quiet as possible. I didn't know what I was expecting. I just needed to see if my instincts were right. Around 2 a.m., I heard something. It was faint at first, barely noticeable. The sound of someone stepping on gravel outside. My apartment is on the ground floor, with a narrow path running right past my window. Then I heard it again. It was closer this time to my window. I reached for my phone, trying to keep my hands from shaking, and opened our chat. I typed, "What are you doing?" She replied right away, trying to see if you're lying again. Now things started to get creepy. Before I could even respond, another message came through. Your lights are off. I stayed completely still, barely breathing. Then another one. But you're still there. That was enough. Slowly, carefully, I stood up and stepped back, away from the window. I didn't check outside. I didn't want to confirm what I already knew. In the morning, when the sunlight made everything feel a little less unreal, I went outside. There were footprints in the gravel, right beneath my window, back and forth, overlapping, like someone had been pacing. It wasn't a quick stop. Whoever it was had stayed there for a while. I blocked her on everything immediately, deleted my accounts, changed my number, did anything I could think of to cut off contact. For a few days, there was nothing. I almost convinced myself it was over. Then I got a message request from a new account. No profile picture, no name, just a single message. Why did you block me on everything? I blocked her right away. About a week later, I was telling a friend about everything. I showed him her profile, expecting him to react the same way I had. Instead, he said, "I've seen her before." I told him, "What do you mean and where?" He pulled up another account on his phone. Same photos, same girl, different name, different bio. Then he added something that made it a lot worse. She matched with my cousin too. I asked what happened. He said, "Nothing." He just blocked her after a while. Yeah, just blocked her, my ass. There was more he wasn't telling me. I never found out who she really was, or if the girl in the photos even knew her identity was being used like that. I don't know if she was alone doing all that, or if there were other people too. I stopped using dating apps after that. I'd rather meet people in real life first.